So I was at the Chicago Auto Show last week, walking the floor, seeing small to mid-sized crossovers that I thought were inexpensive. They ranged on the low side from $25,000 US to as much as 50 grand for things like Nissan Rogues or Mitsubishi plug-in hybrids, which is a gussied up Nissan Rogue. And it got me to thinking, would I rather be the fanciest house in the cheap seats or the cheap seats in the fancy neighborhood? Okay, so how does one become the cheap seats in the fancy neighborhood? Well, it usually involves something smaller in size and a badge, ideally from a place like Munich. Enter Exhibit A, a new BMW X1. It's not like this is an entirely new vehicle. They've had this around before. This is just a new generation. And as you can see, a smaller crossover. But that brings about the question, BMW, they make fancy, go-fast things that usually have inline six-cylinder engines that are silky smooth. How can they make this at a lower price? Well, for those of you that have been hiding under a rock for the past 20, 30 years, they also own Mini, which from the beginning of their history has always been considered fun to drive, playful, and definitely practical. Put another way, more affordable. So what BMW does is take the platform for that car, which is front-wheel drive based, make it all-wheel drive, and put it underneath a crossover carrying case, and voila, you have an affordable BMW crossover. Now in terms of size here, this is about the size and wheelbase of a Nissan Rogue from the last generation to this generation. They've increased the wheelbase by 1 inch. So rather than this being about a silky smooth inline six-cylinder engine and German performance, this is about a badge and packaging. You see, this is the business end of a vehicle like this, no matter what neighborhood it lives in. And I, as a 6-footer, this is where I'd put the front seat, which means I have some room back here. So we've come to the first challenge with these types of equations. Basically, you're trading some of the budget for the badge in exchange for size. Basically, what this costs, one could have a pretty well-equipped Telluride. Does it mean it's low rent back here? Not exactly. 2 USB-C ports, as well as a fancy reclining seat, which brings us to the flip side of the packaging coin, the arsand, otherwise known as the storage. Now, depending on where the rear seat is, it's 25 to 57 cubic feet of storage. There's even a dandy little spot down here underneath the cargo floor that actually stays up. Very few OEMs do that. Then once I do put this down, I can store pretty much anything I want back here within reason in the fancy neighborhood. It may share platform with the Mini, but it's certainly not Mini in weight. 3,750 pounds, or depending on Express weights and measures, 1,701 kilograms with that sport mode. A little bit of a delay there. Oh, but it ramps up, it goes. You definitely feel the Mini delivery and power. Now, the big thing going on here is not so much the engine and the power that comes out of the engine, it's the combination of the engine and the transmission. Now, this is unlike other BMWs in that it has a 7-speed dual clutch. So you and I have learned in many BMW episodes that BMW, they're unusually good at managing the technology that controls a transmission. They can pull it off the shelf from other suppliers that feed other car manufacturers and make theirs completely their own. Now this is a different scenario because we've got clutches, 2 of them, and as such, the sportiness of the way this works in conjunction with a smaller, higher revving engine, it's magnificent out here. It's fun out here, but most people are not going to use it out here. Around town, this is downright sprightly. It's quick, even though it's almost 3,800 pounds. Zipping in and out of traffic, it's well suited to the application of this transmission. Now, as we will learn with the suspension, there are multiple modes in the delivery of power. We've been in sport this entire time, but we can switch this to, say, an efficient. I will say the efficient is so intrusive on the way it delivers power that one would want to toggle between normal and sport. Sport is ridiculous for using it around town because it disables all of the active control and stabilization systems. But now let's focus on what this thing is all about, and that is the way it rides, not so much drives. And to do that, let's go back into switching modes and go into Sport. And it says activate here. We've disabled all of the doodads that keep us from going over the cliff here. And the first thing you notice is there are adjustable dampers here, which changes the ride quality. This is all about ride quality in a vehicle like this. So in the normal mode, driving around town, it feels, I don't want to say German, it doesn't have that heft to it that other German vehicles have, but it doesn't feel like a Mini. To me, the last one felt like a Mini, and they didn't do a good job of really camouflaging that it's the same platform as the Mini. Here, they do a much better job where it's got its own personality, it's got its own feel. It controls all of the movements of the otherwise taller vehicle. In other words, you're not going to jar your passengers around driving it around town. Now, two huge points of information. This car is fitted with a couple of options that change the way it drives. Number one, it's fitted with the larger 20-inch wheels. These are on offer with 18s, 19s, and 20s. I can't honestly tell you that the larger wheels change the ride quality. In other words, it's not choppy, it's not stiff like other applications of 20-inch wheels. And then there are the adjustable dampers. For situations like this, great. But why are they important in a vehicle like this? I would argue it's a function of wanting composure over a tall vehicle. That would be the only need to have the adjustable dampers. It's an expensive option, but again, it just hides the Mini platform underneath a BMW badge. Now, not everything is puppy dogs and roses. There is one aspect here that lets down all the other bits we just discussed, and that is the braking, usually a strong point for BMWs, but here there just isn't enough of it. We've determined that this is a relatively quick vehicle for what it is and the equation it's trying to be, and I don't believe it's a situation where it's tuning or brake pedal feel. It just doesn't have enough diameter in the brake, and you notice it not so much in situations like this, people aren't going to do this, but around town. If you have emergency stopping situations or you're ducking in and out of traffic, you definitely find yourself asking the gods in Munich for a bit more stopping power. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game on the options game with today's contestant, a very odd-looking Mini. This is the BMW X1 X-Drive 28i, which means it's all-wheel drive and a four-cylinder for a base price of $38,600. So far, we're off to a smashing start. Then there's the color, Frozen Pure Gray Metallic. Now, in the BMW world, frozen means it's a matte finish. $2,350. Put it on the way. That is about 7 to 8% of the base price of the vehicle. I don't think I would put that much money into paint. Actually, for a $38,000 vehicle, I wouldn't put any money into paint. Then we press on to the Shadow Line trim, which is a lot of the black trim, which works well with the gray, but that is an additional $300. Then the M Sport package. This is incredibly important because it adds the 20-inch wheels, it adds the adaptive dampers, it adds the sport steering wheel, it adds the Sensitech dash, as well as some other M bits for $2,300. Then there is a premium package, also somewhat important, the Harman Kardon sound system, the head-up display, the surround view camera, as well as an interior camera so you can do selfies while you're driving. I will never understand this. They first premiered it in the 7 Series and now it cascades down here. $4,200. Then the heated steering wheel and front seats, which part of that is in the premium package. So here I don't understand why they're charging us $550. Then the remote engine start, optional on a BMW, even though one that's $38,000, $300. Then the only other thing we pay extra for is the destination and handling from Regensburg, Deutschland for $995, which brings us to a total retail price of $50,795. Okay, so you and I switch to the sport mode on the transmission and have a discussion about the interior. And like the exterior, a lot of changes going on here, but some good, some bad. Let's start with the good. The obvious one is the screen. It's got that one screen like other BMWs. We first saw it in the iX, and it is subsequently cascaded to other BMWs. But then the real big change here is how it's set up in the car. If you notice the dashboard, it's farther away from the driver. And the big question is, why is that important? Well, it takes away the mininess of the interior design. The other one, the previous one, it felt like a Mini on the inside, because unlike other BMWs, the dash was tall and the console was kind of low in the car. Here, I feel the dashboard is farther away, and I feel this roominess to a car that frankly isn't very big. So at least the front passengers have some extra space because of design. Think of this as like a trick in design. Then there's some playfulness in here, like the speaker grills, they come from the 7 series. Then there are the door handles and the door pulls, and here they've designed in some pageantry, something you wouldn't expect in a vehicle that frankly is a very fancy Nissan Rogue. Then the console itself, it's changed. Yes, it still is that mini platform, it's low, but they've hidden it in that they've raised the armrest and put some controls high in the armrest, and then they've got the storage down here for the phone. Now granted, if you have a big phone, a big heavy phone like mine, it's supposed to stand straight up. That's where the wireless charger is. But this, it doesn't work that way, so I had to put it off to the side, otherwise you'd hear it flip and flop back and forth. That's all the good. Then the not so good. This one, it's very nice on the inside. It's got like a faux leather dash top and faux leather on the top of the door panels. That's part of those 2 packages we talk about, as well as some other dress-up bits here, which make this one much nicer. But as we've learned, this one is almost $51,000. And then there's the thing that I'm just puzzled by. You and I have talked about UX systems in all cars. And I've been very critical of cars that are screen-based, because where your finger goes is where your eyes go. Whether you like that or not, meaning you like screens, it's just not safe. And BMW, they were like the reference, because they spent 20 years working on this like mouse-type controller and got it to the point where it is the gold standard. And in this one vehicle, they took it out. Notice there is no unified controller here. Yeah, I've got the volume, I've got the mode buttons down here, auto hold, and I can skip things, and then obviously the transmission controller. But if I want to do anything, I've got to go here and take my eyes off the road, especially a road like this or driving around in traffic. This is not a good solution, and before you say it, voice isn't there yet. The processors are not powerful enough to operate things in timely need with a vehicle that weighs almost 4,000 pounds. Okay, so what have we learned today? Before I share that, a little bit of full disclosure. The previous generation of X1 wasn't a big fan, mainly because there wasn't enough differentiation between it and the Mini on which it was based to warrant the badge and the execution of the whole project. This generation, something completely different, because all the bits we discussed, plus the packaging, make this now a legitimate cheap seats in the fancy neighborhood, with a huge catch. Not spec'd like this. This is not about making it the fancy one with $2,400 in paint. This is about getting the most basic one with kind of the basic wheels, basic suspension, drive it around town. The only thing I didn't understand from BMW is if the panoramic roof is fitted as standard. I'd want that because it makes the interior more like open and airy. This should really be a $42,000 vehicle at most. Anything above that, I'd say different direction. Which brings us to the wish list. And here, you know where I'm going with this. The UX. You spent over 20 years perfecting it, taking crap from people like me, as well as many other people who bought your cars, and now you have the reference standard, and then in the mass-produced model that bring new people into the brand, you take away the gold standard of UX? I do not understand this. Fix it. But I'm just one man, and this is the point of the episode where I turn this around to you to opine in the comments below, or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And with that, if you got value out of this episode, I would greatly appreciate you sharing these episodes with all your friends on your socials, as well as clicking subscribe and notifications. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später.